This time on Classic Motorcycle A to Z, it's the letter G. So I'm going to be spending the next couple of months on a major adventure. This doesn't mean we're going to leave you without content though. We're putting together a series of videos which we're calling Classic Motorcycle A to Z. So basically we're going to run through the alphabet and give some history and information about various classic motorcycle companies as we go. Gelli was founded by one Adalberto Gelli. Adalberto's expertise lay in the two-stroke engine. He started his career working at Fiat, trying to develop a small two-stroke engine to power one of their motor cars. But he left in 1911 due to Fiat's lack of enthusiasm for the project, and he would continue his development work through until 1914, and this would result in a 350cc split single engine. During the First World War he busied himself by working for other motorcycle companies. However, in 1918 he won a competition for the Royal Italian Army to develop a new generation of dispatch rider machines, and it was in this machine he used his 350 split single. And two strokes would remain at the heart of the company, from their potent Grand Prix races to their tiny Tiger Cross mopeds. Gilera was founded by Giuseppe Gilera in 1909 in the town of Acora, Italy. The company's first machine was a single-cylinder 317cc model with a single speed and around 7 horsepower. Top speed was a very credible for the time 60 to 65 miles per hour, and this engine would form the basis of a series of V-twins that they would develop thereafter, using side valve, F-heads or overhead valves depending on requirement. In the 30s the company would become famous for its transverse 4-cylinder bikes that were supercharged, which they entered into Grand Prix racing, an example of which Serafini would use to set a 100-mile-an-hour lap at the Ulster Grand Prix. Post-war the company was banned from using multi-cylinder bikes in Grand Prix, and so would use a racing version of the Saturno single. But this ban would of course eventually be lifted, and the 4-cylinder Gilera piloted by Jeff Duke would be an unstoppable force in the 1950 Grand Prix era, winning the 500cc title 6 years out of 8 during the decade. But by the end of the 50s, the Italian industry, just like that in Britain and Germany, was facing a major downturn in the face of cheap cars. And so in 1957, the major Italian manufacturers would form a gentleman's agreement to no longer compete in Grand Prix, a rule which MV Agusta would flout to become the dominant force in Grand Prix racing during the early 60s. And so in 1963, now retired Jeff Duke would form Scuderia Duke, effectively a non-works team, to compete against the MV Agustas. He hired successful racers such as John Hartle and a then young and up-and-coming Phil Reed, but after some initial success they began to find it increasingly difficult to compete against the MVs. On road, finding themselves in an increasingly difficult market, Gilera decided to concentrate their efforts on a new generation of smaller capacity single-cylinder unit construction machines, usually of around 175 or 150ccs. But excellent as these little singles were, they were rather expensive to produce, and the company was simply not profitable, and in 1968 they would go into receivership. And so it was that in 1969, Gilera would become part of the Piaggio Group, a company best known for its Vespa scooters. And under Piaggio ownership, Gilera's smaller machines would be restyled and updated, and by the early 80s the company had an excellent range of small capacity two-strokes. But there would still be a large capacity single in the range. This was the Nordwest dual terrain bike, what would be regarded today as a small adventure bike. The Nordwest would form the basis of one of Gilera's more interesting stories. In 1986, Japanese entrepreneur Tetsui Izukawa visited the Gilera factory in the company of Roberto Gelli. He had twice won the World Championship as a manager in the 500 class, with Marco Lucanelli and Franco Uncini. Izukawa's proposition was interesting: to use the Nordwest engine to create a brand new single-cylinder calf racer. Not surprisingly, Izukawa got something of a polite brush off from the Piaggio management. course, what he didn't realise was that Gilera had already had a very similar idea and had developed something along the same lines with a competitor company, C. Ito & Co. And together they would create the Bielbaro Saturno, a brand new single using the Nordwest engine. By the end of production in 1992, Gilera had sold 1,200 units of the new Saturno. Greaves was a company that started with a bet. Derry Preston Cobb, who had been paralysed from birth, bet his cousin he couldn't use a lawnmower engine to power his wheelchair, and so his cousin Bert Greaves would win the bet and launch the two of them into the motorcycle industry. Well, eventually at least. Because after they created their first powered wheelchair, the pair found their idea in much demand in the era after World War II, and so had set up a company to produce the Invacar. And with the high demand, the company was able to use some of the money to develop their first motorcycle. And so in 1951 they produced their first prototype. It used a 197cc Villiers engine, but apart from that it was very different from anything else that had been seen before, using rubber-based suspension units at the front and the rear. And although much refinement was required, it wasn't long before Greaves were able to put a range of machines out into the marketplace, and by the mid-50s would find their designs to be highly effective in the off-road environment, both trials and scrambles. Where their lightweight and nimble little bikes were able to see off machines with much larger and more powerful engines. And there would be road machines too, initially using British Anzani two-strokes, but later using the ubiquitous Villiers, although often tuned to Greaves' own specification. There's no doubt that Greaves machines were the ultimate expression of function over form, with few Greaves models ever been described as truly attractive, and this has put them in for some criticism over the years and often disregarded as just ugly, inefficient machines. But this is often internet chatter based more about the machine's looks than how effective it was in its era. But off-road in particular, Greaves would begin to develop its own power units. Initially they would simply modify the Villiers units with top ends of their own design, but later they would design entire engines, albeit with an Albion gearbox and an Alpha crankshaft of course, with their single-cylinder two-stroke unit being used as the basis for a road racing 250 as well as the company's potent motocross machines. In 1964 the Greaves Silverstone would win the Manx Grand Prix 250 class, and 64 would also see the introduction of the Greaves Challenger, their first all in-house product, that would in some way form the basis for all Greaves motocross bikes to follow, right through to the Griffin 2 of 1977. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it interesting. Look out, there will be more videos in the series coming soon. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, thank you very much for watching.